Hi, I'm your host, Marlo Lemon, and you're listening to Wild Voice, the podcast where I take this voice of mine and share my wild journey with you. Being widowed at 34 with a 15-month-old, most would see as life ending. And instead, I alchemized it and put life back together, and it became more beautiful and fulfilling than I could have ever imagined. Through this life shift of mine, I realized who I am and what I'm here to do. I'm an intuitive energy healer, and sharing how I view the world is how I help you upgrade your life and alchemize your journey into magic. From day one, I wanted to share my journey, call it intuition, but I knew it was going to do more good out in the world than keeping it to myself. So when I say I've mastered life, that doesn't mean I'm perfect or that life is. I mean, I've mastered the concept of life, and I want to share that with you. On today's episode of Wild Voice, I am interviewing Mari Dagger. She is an intimacy and sex coach, and she works with couples to help them reignite the passion, desire, spark, pleasure, love, trust, and respect. She works with couples to help them understand what their love language is and also their sex language. Did you know that was a thing? Her goal is to help you by giving you the tools and structure on how to implement them into the relationship to help create pleasure and to have more satisfying orgasms, to also help bring curiosity and exploration into your sex life. I don't think that sounds too bad, huh? So we're going to talk to her today, and we're going to learn more about these sex languages and get a little bit more information on her background. So here we go. Mari.
Marlo.
I'm so excited to talk to you today about what you do and to give people a little bit more information on this really intriguing topic of sex languages. So before we jump into it, can you tell me a little bit of why you even got into this? Like how'd you even find out that this was a thing? And why did you figure that this was going to be helpful? You obviously saw it work for you, right?
Yes. That is a great question. I love that question. For me, it all started really young for me. I was always curious. My curiosity wanted more. It was hungry for more. And for me, growing up in the culture that I did, in the society that I did as a woman, it isn't something you talk about. It isn't something that you address or you try to explore. And I had to, for a little bit, shut it down, my sexuality. And it killed me. It really hurt me in so many ways that I was like, that's not okay. That can't be how we should operate and live our life. I am a woman. I am sexual. I am feminine, and I love being sensual. It's just a part of who I am. It's a part of who I am at my core. And I was told growing up that's not something we talk about. And I let it go. But I couldn't let it just be. If you know me, you know I don't let things just be. And that's where I started diving for more answers. I also was married for 10 years, and I couldn't explore my sexuality the way I wanted and the way I craved. So I had to mute it. And when I got divorced and when I left my ex-husband in 2012, I took that opportunity to dive more into this world. I wanted to learn more about it and to learn more about myself. And why am I like this? Why do I have a high sex drive? Why am I really curious about my sexuality? And the more I started learning, the more I understood there's nothing to be ashamed. There's no guilt. And it isn't taboo to go exploring and to figure out who you are. And that's what I did. And the more I started learning about this topic, and for me, I'm like, why do I have a very high sex drive? Why am I very sexual? And when I came and stumbled upon the 5 sex languages, it all clicked. It all started to connect for me. The pieces of the puzzle fell together in the most beautiful way I could ever imagine.
Ah, I love that. And you just described all of that so beautifully. Like it's so, I can like picture it. Well, not like picture you doing all those things, but, but I can like see how you would get to where you're at now. And I think a lot of people listening can probably relate to that feeling of kind of like something's wrong with you in either direction, right? And we're going to get into the what those sex languages are and what to do with them and kind of some fun information and tools that you have, whether someone is single or in a relationship. And I think where it starts and where it sounded like that your journey started for you, and I have experience in this as well, is that idea of, we'll call it sexual trauma. And we talked about this the other day when we were kind of throwing around ideas on what we wanted to bring up today. And this was a common thread. And this was something that I think we both have had experience with our own clients, with our own personal lives, and just friends, right? Friends and family, what you hear about. And I had similar experiences in the sense of I was, shamed and told that I was boy crazy and that I was ridiculous and I have my priorities wrong. And that, once I got into a relationship and I had that more, like, I don't even know what to call it, kind of just like this fulfillment that sexuality brought to me, not just, and I think it's very different. And I think where that shame piece comes in, or guilt, or people start to feel bad, is that it sometimes is acted like if you're wanting those things that all you want is sex and nothing else matters. And that's actually the opposite. It's actually, you have made it so valuable and so important and given it such purpose that it actually holds this like importance and this soul alignment and this fulfillment in a way that isn't actually just sex. Because I'm going to speak for myself, but maybe you can relate. It's actually not, it's not like I'm looking to like check a box and see like, oh, I need to have sex this many times, or I just need to have as much sex as possible or with as many people as possible. And if that's someone's jam, that's fine. What we're talking about is that that's generally, there's a deeper desire there, and there's a deeper kind of like trust, and I want that soul connection and I want this and that. And that's where that kind of feeds that. And I don't want to say it's just desire, because it almost is like acting like it's not there. It's kind of just this pull that it's important, and that it's a piece, like you said, a piece of the puzzle, a big piece of the puzzle of understanding ourselves and our relationships and our partner. So with sexual trauma, that kind of being where we start, we've mentioned that a lot of the times we look at it as the most extreme, version of sexual trauma. And there is so much, like it's such a broad meaning, like there's just so many things that's categorized under. And we're not talking about just the physical sexual trauma, but, someone being shamed or told that, that's gross, or that they need to get their priorities straight, or they're immature. I remember my late husband, he would tell me that I was being immature and that that's not how adult relationships work. Like, now we're not in college anymore, like grow up. And I remember being like, oh, and then being younger and, being told I was boy crazy and that was, I was like a slut. And like, that's the fact that I care about that too much or so much is, gross. And I can't be around, other people. It was just, all these things were said. So when I started to hear that as an adult, it started to really be like, oh, okay, well, maybe there is something wrong with me. Like maybe I do have this like desire that's ridiculous. So I'm going to suppress it. I'm going to just, hide it in a way, like not like it was something that came up all the time, but it was really sad to me in my relationship, my marriage, that it wasn't something that was respected and that was honored, because it is a part of me. Like you said, it's a part of you. And even if it's a part of someone that they're not as interested, right? That's even a love, that's even a sex language. Like there are some people that that desire is different, and it's actually looks very different than just physical intimacy. And so it's such a broad topic, and I'm going to let you speak and dive into this. But I just wanted to touch on that sexual trauma piece that a lot of us have this connection to. And when we can acknowledge it, we can kind of see like, oh, okay, so that happened. I'm learning about myself. And the more we can learn, like through our I keep calling them love languages,
Mhm.
sex languages, we can start to understand ourselves more and give ourselves a little bit more grace, because we have to do that first, right? Before we can let a partner in and let them start to see us for who we are and actually like blossom into this like very, balanced, soul aligned person. So yeah, so I think that sexual trauma piece is really important to know that that's kind of where a lot of it starts for a lot of us, and it can look so different. So people listening kind of like, take that information and that understanding and see if there is something. And it doesn't have to be this intense, like dramatic event, but it could be like, oh yeah, I kind of was made to feel that way, or and it changed how I did this or that. So it's something to just acknowledge as we're talking about this, that there might be something that has shifted how we show up and act based on things that have happened, like anything, right? Stuff that happens in our past and what we move through is pretty much how we get to where we are in our most soul aligned self. So it's not a bad thing to have those things in our past, but now we can pinpoint it and then use it to our advantage.
You're absolutely correct. I love that. And I love that you talked about the trauma in regards to our sexuality. And that can, like you said, look in so many ways. It looks different for everybody. It's not one size fits all. And trauma isn't, it can also look along the lines of being verbally shamed and abused about your own sexuality. It doesn't have to be in the form of physical abuse. And for someone like myself, when I got married, I was 17 and I was a virgin. And in my culture, I grew up that you save your virginity until you get married. Now, how does that make sense for someone who is very sexual and has a very high sex drive? And for me, I was always curious about myself and I couldn't explore that. So when I got married at 17, instead of being welcomed and loved and cared and respected in that way of like, hey, I saved myself for you, I was shamed because I came in as a virgin with a really curious mindset about it and I wanted to explore it. But that took a turn for me. And the more I tried to put myself out there with my husband at the time, I got shut down even more. And that part of me, that sexuality, got bruised. It got hurt on so many levels. And then I had to undo all that. That's the trauma I went through. That was my sexual trauma of being shamed by my own husband, being shamed by people around me for wanting to explore it. So I had to learn how to undo all that and make peace with it. And like you said, not to feel the shame and the guilt that I did nothing wrong. That was a huge part of me, a part of my healing process. And especially, not a lot of people talk about what happens after a divorce, the dating and the meeting new people and all that part. For me, it was more of, okay, well, I'm going to heal myself. I don't need a man to heal me, to help me heal. I have to heal what one man did. So I went on this mindset of I'm going to do it on my own. But then I started to realize there's certain parts of my healing that I couldn't do on my own. because it takes two in that world to be intimate, to have intercourse. It takes two people to be vulnerable. I can be vulnerable with myself, but it's not the same thing as being vulnerable with a partner. That on its own has a different type of healing. And I had to let my partner at the time help me heal that. I had to let him in. And I'm like, yeah, I'm struggling with this. I don't know what to do about it. I thought I fixed it. I thought I healed it. It's not about fixing, because I'm not broken. No one is broken for us to say, I'm going to fix myself. It's just undoing certain traumas and healing it, making peace with it and loving it. And that was the biggest thing for me, the biggest light bulb moment of this part of my life, my sexuality. I can't love it. I cannot heal it completely on my own. I needed help. Because like that saying, it takes two to tango. And I couldn't tango on my own.
Absolutely, right? It just doesn't look the same. It
Exactly.
doesn't have the same effect.
Exactly.
So I love everything that you just said, because I can relate to it so wholeheartedly, that especially as we learn new tools and we really dive into this, and it becomes our life's work to take our past and the things that we've gone through and learn about it and use life as our playground, we are really focused. And I want to say in the beginning, not intentionally, because it's not this aggressive way, we're very independent. We're really, okay, like I'm going to take control of my life, and I am going to make sure I take responsibility. And when I take responsibility, I am the one that I'm getting the tools from. I am the one that is saying how this healing process is going to go. And that's really, really important for these initial stages of healing. And a lot of people talk about you have to be on your own first before you can be with someone else. And there is a lot of truth to that, right? We know that. We know that someone else can't heal for us and they can't heal us. But I don't use but a lot, but it is, there are two parts to healing this with pretty much anything, but we're talking about, we'll say sexual trauma and sexuality and just getting to know ourselves in that way intimately. There are two parts to that. And it's that initial acknowledgement and responsibility and diving in head first to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And then, like you said, naturally, it's like someone comes into the picture to help us continue that healing, to blossom even more and to move through it even more completely. And I can tell you, like you've had experience with this, I've also had experience with this. And it was that same kind of moment where I would get triggered by things and I'm like, what? I'm like, I am like so over this and like past it. Why is this coming up? And why is it so real? Like, why does it feel like it's so in my face and so intense? And when I say real, you might know what I'm trying to say, but it feels like you're in that moment again. And you're like, I have come so far. And it's kind of alarming for myself. I was like, I was almost shell shocked and a little scared because I was like, are you kidding? Like I have come so far and this is what's pulling me back. And I had to have a lot of compassion for myself and that awareness, like you said, that this is two parts. There's the healing we do on our own, and then there's the healing we do with somebody else. And that is really, really important. And like you said, you cannot access certain things and certain triggers and certain traumas and releases and healing without someone else in the picture to kind of bounce that energy off ultimately. And it's very, someone pleasuring themselves solo is a very different, and that still makes people very vulnerable and uncomfortable. And that's a level of healing, right? To get to that point, there is a whole other level when you bring someone else into the picture that has to, it's like that completion of this healing process. So it's just to know that whether someone's single or not, it doesn't mean you can't completely heal, but you will completely heal to the level that you can and the stage that you're at. So that might be, sometimes I tell people, you'll have like a really close friend that is going through something, And that can be very triggering to you. And you'll find that you'll pick up certain healings from that. Like those triggers of this friend going through something very much so makes you feel like you're in that situation again. And then it gets closer and closer, right? Then you have a partner and you're intimate with someone, or you just go on a date and that triggers you in some way. So it's definitely important to see this full picture and know when those tough times happen. I think ultimately, not to be afraid of them. And I can speak for myself and say that I have a partner that allowed that healing to happen and allowed me to kind of show up as me. And it was kind of a little human and a little messy at first because I was trying to like learn how to walk again. It was kind of like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't really know what's happening. My old tools are working, but they also kind of aren't. There's like another level I need to access. And it's just it's uncomfortable and there are some tough moments. And it's also pretty great to see because it kind of unlocks parts of you. And I can say for myself, still going through this, right? Continuing to heal and move through these things. It kind of unlocks and gives you access to another part of you that maybe you never were or able to be before. And I can say that that's how it's felt for me with these little kind of adjustments and tweaks and healings and things that I've been doing in the process. It has actually allowed me to feel like I'm showing up even more like myself than I have in this lifetime, in this body, in this meat suit that I ever have before. So I think what we're just trying to tell people is don't be don't be afraid of that stuff, but it is very valid. It is very intimidating and can be uncomfortable. And sexual triggers are intense, like any trigger, but it holds this weight to it that is really can be overwhelming. So we're here to let people know that it's normal, that it is complete. All of us deal with some sort of sexual trauma. It doesn't mean some is better or worse. It just means, comparative to our journey. And there are ways to move through it and to know that it's okay. It's okay to sit in those uncomfortable spots. It's not going to be forever. Not to feel scared that this is like your life and you've signed up for this and now it's just this dread, that it actually can be different. And there's a healing that can happen on your own. And we're going to give people some tools that actually the things that we're going to talk about, the sex languages, is something obviously people can acknowledge and work through on their own, which is important to do. I'll let you, take it from here. And also something they can bring into their relationship. So this is kind of a twofer tool because it's something that can be approached in both ways, whether someone is single or in a relationship, which is amazing. So you take it away. So these sex languages, what are they? How many are there? And how does someone find out what theirs is?
I love that. Um, so for the 5 sex languages, I'm gonna go, there's not any specific um, list in the sense of they're not numbered in a certain way. So I'm gonna start with energetic, sensual, sexual, kinky, and then the shapeshifter. And a lot of people ask me, what is a shapeshifter? I love that one because I will confess that is me. So the shapeshifter is somebody who can shift throughout the 4 languages I listed out. It isn't one is more than the other. Just like how the 5 love languages, you have your top language, your second, your third. This one, for the shapeshifter, it's all 4. You rotate throughout all of them. Your partner
Okay.
can.
I'm going to admit to you, I am also a shapeshifter. So
I love that.
out of curiosity, do you find, but as you're getting into these, just because this is a question that I have, shapeshifters, like you said, it doesn't mean certain ones are more sexual than others, or does that mean, for example, a shapeshifter because they shift into these and enjoy these different languages equally? Do you find that that has anything to do with like sex drive or desire, anything like that? Or is it literally just kind of like a fact, like black and white? It's just this. It doesn't necessarily mean how much you like it or don't like it. It's just, again, just kind of like a
It's
little.
more of it's more of who you are, and it's just how you are
Okay. So it's
and how
not
you're
like
wired.
a level of sex drive. It's really just more of like an attribute.
It's more exactly. It's more of like the attribute, and that's what your attribute is. And the thing is also these can change. And we do know, you and I know that love languages over time, because we as people change constantly. Our love languages do change over time. The same thing as this. The more you explore your sex language, the more you explore your sexuality, there is a possibility of shifting from, say, you're sensual for a whole year, and then the next year your top language is kinky. They do change, but I have noticed majority of clients that I've worked with, and for myself, for example, I haven't seemed to change shapeshifter. I've always been a shapeshifter, and I don't think I will change that. That would change for me. Um, but for example, if you're not a shapeshifter and you're kinky, that is your top language. That's what you operate. That's what your partner needs to show up as, so you can have more arousal. You can be more aroused by your partner if your partner is doing kinky stuff.
Okay. So another question I have. So let's say someone's hearing this and they're like, okay, and that makes them feel a little bit taken back, like not in a bad way, but kind of like, oh, like let's say I'm sensual. Okay. And I'll have you go through and maybe say like a quick little like word or whatever that describes those so people have an idea. But to tackle this question, if someone's, let's say they're sensual and their partner's kinky and they're not that language, but now their partner wants them to show up in that way, that seems like that would put a lot of pressure on somebody. And we all know in the bedroom, sexuality, having pressure on that is like a killer. Like it kills the mood. The energy of that is different. So if two partners have different sex languages, but they obviously want to show up for each other and also be able to show up for themselves, right? You don't want anyone doing
Mhm.
something that they don't want to do or doing something that they feel like they're just doing for their partner, because that sets up an expectation and a whole other slew of things. This is why this topic, we could talk about it forever. So, what would you recommend to somebody and how they show up? Because my guess would be you would want to help guide your partner into things that you like, or maybe being vocal about, hey, I love when you do this. I can't wait to try that again. Or I thought about this today. I would love if we played around with that. What do you think? Like making it, there is a way to approach this topic and bring it up to our partners so it doesn't feel like a demand and it doesn't feel like it kinks this, flow of energy by, white knuckle gripping this certain expectation and putting the pressure on our partner, right? Because ultimately that doesn't do any good for anybody. So how would you recommend someone goes about actually kind of inviting their partner in to the things that they do like?
That's a great question. I get that a lot. So it and like you said, you said something really important, where a couple, not all the time both of them have the same sex language. That's okay. And I wouldn't expect every every couple to have the same sex language, because you're two different people. You're wired two different ways, and that's okay. So it starts with understanding where you're at, which one you're at, whether you're energetic, sensual, sexual, and figuring out where your partner is too, and then coming to an agreement. Like you said, if I'm sensual and my partner's kinky, coming to an agreement in the sense of sitting down and communicating what you both will agree on, not rules. I don't like the word rules. It's very harsh when it comes to this stuff. So it's a thing where you both need to agree. I'm going to agree that I will try A, B, C. but X, Y, and Z, I don't really feel comfortable trying right now. Maybe we can talk about it in 3 months and see where I'm at. So figuring out what your limits are when it
I
comes
love,
to this.
I love that because that gives it also is, we talk about energy a lot. It gives that energy to it of, hey, we're on the same team. Let's try this. This is new for both of us. And almost talking about and asking for more of the things we do love instead of don't do well, let me think about how I want to say this, because how we have conversations and we tell someone what we don't want, and this topic and this conversation can have that in it. But sometimes what happens is the person doesn't know what to do because all we're doing is telling them, don't go that way. Just like when we say, don't look over there. What does everyone do? They go and look over there. It's just the way our brains kind of function. It's that someone says something, that's all we focus on. So to help our partners and ourselves and our own knowing is to ask for the things that we do want and the things that we love and the things that they're doing already. So they have examples of like, oh, I really love when you do this, even if it's just like a piece of it. Like, I really love when you grab my butt when you walk by me.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do more of that. Like there's ways to support that. So what are your thoughts on that? That idea when someone's trying to express it. And it sounds like you pretty much answered it, is saying the things that you do love and then saying people can have this space of like this safe space of like, hey, I'm not comfortable with this, or this doesn't feel good to me, at least not yet. Let's start slow. And I want to know your thoughts on this because I have heard this before. Taking a step back and then kind of like starting over again, like starting out with figuring out like, what do you like? Obviously learning about these languages and then being like, let's just like, I don't know, for a week, just like roll around and make out. Or then, the next week we check in and let's like take it a step further, kind of allowing that space that just because you've gone to let's say the extreme, extreme meaning like you've had sex, you've been with someone for a while, that you can take it back and slow it down to relearn for yourself and for your partner. And it kind of adds this excitement back. And what are your thoughts on that with the sex languages?
Yeah, for that, I would say setting a goal. So, for example, hey, this coming week, can we take a notch back and just take it a bit in a different direction, and let's set a new goal for our love life. Instead of being physically intimate with each other, can we have more intimacy? Can we have more intimacy in the sense of maybe just going out and having a picnic or a candlelight dinner, just the two of us, or even just lounging on our couch in our PJs with a bowl of popcorn and watching a movie? Can we do that? Can we set a new goal for this week to show up in a different way for each other than we have? You will see that you'll learn something. I promise you'll learn at least one or two things that is new about your partner and about yourself. And I don't promise lightly. I don't usually promise, but you will learn something new because it is different. You're showing up in a different way that you typically would not show up as. And this world is big, it's huge. And we can, like you said, we could talk about it for hours on end. It is important. I do talk about the sex languages. It is really important also to be intimate with your partner, to have intimacy in the relationship, because you want to be vulnerable. That's where that connection starts to be created, that bond.
I love that because that's actually also, and tell me if you feel the same way, that with this shapeshifter mentality and this enjoyment and this, I see the fulfillment and the like kind of like magic and being sexually intimate with a partner. Like I see how it's not just that, it actually is this life force energy that flows into all other areas of life. It's not just that. So if people could take a step back and be like, okay, if you feel like your relationship is stale, or you can't have these conversations with your partner, or you feel kind of like you can't show up as you, notice how that's affecting other areas of your life, to see that this isn't just affect our physical connection with someone. So, how this might be flowing into your vocation and your career, or it might be flowing into how you show up for your family, or how you're showing up for friends, and how you're perceived, how physically you feel, like in your body or mentally, because it's really important to see the connection that this actually is a life force. Sex and this sort of intimacy is a life force energy, and it does spread out to every other area of our life. So I think it's important to see that and to make note that that is something that's happening, and it allows us to see the importance in it and to value it. Because I think that's where sometimes it gets a little lost. Like, oh, this is actually, I need to get the bills paid, or family, we need to get this done. And we do a lot of the human things before we take pleasures in our life. And I think we have it a little bit backwards. So just something I wanted to throw out there, because I think sometimes it gets pushed to the side, right? Because we're like,
Yeah.
oh, life is busy. I'm a parent. I'm working full time. I'm stressed. And that's all valid, right? We know that that
Mhm.
changes our chemistry, and that
Yeah.
changes how we show up and if we feel like being intimate. But to your point, that intimacy and kind of those coins in the bucket throughout our days actually build this sort of fire and this desire to want to be intimate, which then just takes all these other areas of our life to the next level, not just our sexual intimacy. But I just wanted to say that I agree with you so much, and I so believe that intimacy is so much more. It's not really the physical part. The biggest part of the intimacy, and actually the desire to want to be sexual with somebody, is to have that intimate connection. And I know that's for me specifically. Like if I didn't have an intimate connection with somebody, I sex doesn't have the fulfillment and the draw that it does, right? Because it just
Right.
doesn't. That's not its purpose for me. It's not just this get it over with so I can move on with my day.
Mhm.
It's actually something much bigger than that.
Well, I love that you brought that up, because on a physical level, we can have intercourse with whomever we desire. But if you don't have that connection, if you don't have that soul connection with someone, it doesn't mean anything. This is where relationships starts falling off the rail. That's where relationships start to fall apart, is when they don't have that connection anymore, that soul connection with their partner. And it just becomes physical. It's just physical exchange at this point. You have to have, it's important just as much as the physical part. It is equally important to have the energetic exchange. And the energetic exchange in a human form can look like intimacy and being vulnerable. Even if you just sit with your partner on the couch and make eye contact, that has such an impact on the both of you. More than if you were both just to go have mind-blowing sex and reach the most incredible orgasm that you both had. That is also incredible. But there's that connection that cannot be broken when it's a soul connection, when the both of you can see each other.
I love
N-
that. And
Not
that's
on a
back to
just
that.
yeah, not on a just I wanted to add, not just being it physical, you see him physically, you see him for who he truly is on a soul level.
That's hands down, right? To see the soul, it all comes back to the soul, that soul
Yes.
alignment, that soul connection, that soul knowing in ourselves, that soul understanding. And these are soul attributes, right? How we show up intimately and how who we are in this way sexually is who we are on a soul level. Like this isn't something, of course, we pick up things and things change with traumas and we start to shift, but it is to ultimately get us to that ultimate soul alignment of who we are. That's the goal on this earth. What we have learned is that you come here, you come with a bunch of stuff, you learn things along the way, your journey looks a certain way. And the ultimate goal is that by the end of it, we are completely soul aligned and the most complete we ever have been. And then we do it all over again. So it's definitely very important. And energetically and physically, I call it kind of like this reward. We get these reprieves and these just beautiful experiences the more soul aligned we are. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to help people get more soul aligned and some tools to put in their toolbox and things that we don't normally get taught, right? These are the things they should teach in sex ed so that we understand ourselves, not so much what they're teaching, but that could be a whole other topic. But with the time that we have left, I want to, if you can, and I don't know if it's possible, with those sex languages, can you give just like, I mean, some of them are pretty obvious, like kinky. We know what that is. That's pretty much something that, so maybe if you could give like a one word, really brief on what each of those actually represent. And it can be really basic just to give someone like a visual or an understanding. And then the last little bit that will kind of, trail into that is what would you tell someone? We talked about having a conversation with bringing it up to their partner. Let's say, we could have two scenarios, someone who's really open with their partner and has that soul connection already. Doesn't mean other people can't have it, but let's say they're comfortable and they go up to their partner and they say, hey, listen to this podcast today, or I learned more about Mari and these are the sex languages. Let's learn ours together and let it go from there. If someone's in a spot where they're feeling a little vulnerable or maybe more in that trauma stage still, how would you recommend someone uses this information that we've given them today and just like a little quick takeaway after you tell us what each of those lovely sex languages are?
Yes, of course. We're going to start with energetic. And I believe you and I both know what that means. And I will let our audience know. So when I say energetic, you're more in touch with the energy part more than the physical part of things in life. And then for your sensual, you need all your five senses to be aroused and turned on, from your sight, your sound, your hearing, all of it. So candlelight dinner with soft music in the background, examples like that. And then you have your sexual. Our sexual peeps, they love that hot and steamy and erotica sex. They crave that. The actual physical part of your body, the way your body is shaped, your breasts, your ass, all that, your hips, that's what arouses them. And then we have our kinky, even though a lot of people assume kinky is just like the BDSM and all those really whips and leashes and things like that. Also, I want to emphasize on kinky, it can be you're teasing your partner with a sexy picture of you. You're eating a piece of dessert that they absolutely love. It's their favorite dessert, but you're eating it in a very sensual way. You're teasing them that they can't have it and you're eating it. That can be something very kinky. And then again, we know our shapeshifter is somebody who will shift through any language. So if their partner is sexual with them, they're easily aroused. If your partner shows up kinky, you're going to be sexually aroused. So it's showing up in all four different types of ways. That's a little.
I love that.
Yes. I love
so
talking about
helpful.
them.
Yeah, they're so fun. And it helps give people just an idea. Because I bet you out of what you described, someone will be like, oh, wait a second. That's like something I like. Or it will just start that conversation for them to start to notice. And if you hear these and you're like, I have no clue which one I am, the nice part is they can reach out to you. I'm going to put your information in the show notes and they can get that questionnaire to get that answer. Is that right?
Yes, they can. I did create a questionnaire that you can do on your own or you could do with your partner. And then that will help you pinpoint a little bit of where you might fall under what category.
I love that because that's kind of, I think, the next thing is everyone's going to want to know what is their sex language. And then it's a questionnaire. Once they reach out to you, they can get that they also can share with their partner or friends or
Mhm.
whatever they want to do.
Yes.
And as far as someone who is maybe more in this trauma stage of it, meaning just maybe a little bit more reserved, a little nervous to bring this up to their partner, feeling vulnerable, still feeling kind of like not really fully in their knowing. And that can be an intimidating conversation. I can speak for myself. That can be, no matter how secure you are, it can be a very intimidating conversation to bring up, right? It doesn't have to
Mhm.
be, but we create that within ourselves with anything.
Exactly.
So, do you have kind of like not a one size fits all because
Mhm.
that's nothing in this life, but something where you would say like, hey, if you're on that edge of feeling a little bit more reserved, what would you recommend someone does with this information? And let's say they find out what theirs is and they're in a partnership. Would they maybe just learn more and actually dive into it on their own and kind of really get solid on what they love before they bring it up to a partner? Because if they're a little intimidated, my intuitive hit is that maybe they just don't know where they are at yet and they're not comfortable with it yet. So, of course, until we're really solid with information, do we really generally share it with somebody else? So, is that where you'd recommend someone starts? Is kind of just get really comfortable with their sex language and healing through their kind of triggers?
Yes. So the thing is, like you said something really important. If they're not comfortable uh in their own body, in their own knowing of what they might be, or even exploring that world, that energy is gonna be cultivated. And then you're going to bring that into the conversation with your partner, and your partner is going to automatically push it away. So before you do that, before you address it with your partner, and you know you're nervous, you don't know where you might stand on the language or how to even bring up the conversation. And I want to say, when I did discover this, I was in a phase of my life where I was like, I'm not dating anymore. I'm going to take a break. So I took a break of dating and being in a relationship for 3.5 years. And I'm like, wait, I love this stuff, but how do I explore it on my own? That's when I was like, okay, maybe I don't need a person to do this with. Let me figure out what I am on my own, to be able to tell my partner, hey, this is what I am. This is how I show up. And that's okay if you don't want to bring it up right away with your partner. That is completely understandable. So, taking every single language and playing around with it on your own. So, if you're sensual, say if you want to figure out if you're sensual or not, create that beautiful dinner. Cook yourself a beautiful meal that you enjoy. Set your place the right way with candles, music, incense, things like that, and see how that makes you feel. Be in your body. I want you to connect with yourself. And how does it, try to listen to those emotions that are coming up? Are they good emotions? Do you feel anything? Is it doing anything to you? Is it making you feel happy? What emotions are coming up for you? And then you do that with every language. Even if you want to explore the kinky world, take yourself and just, without telling anybody, go to a sex toy shop, walk around. How does it make you feel when you walk through the area where it's all the whips and leashes and chains and cuffs and all that? How does it make you feel? Do you repulse? Do you pull back? Are you more intrigued? Are you curious about it? How does it make you feel? And usually, also, as a woman, I tell my female clients, when you come out of the shower, grab a bottle of lotion, and in a very sensual way, put lotion on your body. Start to notice your legs, your thighs, your arms, your stomach. Start to notice that. Feel.
Okay. I love that. I just want to say, because that's actually one that I have done and I continue to do. And I
Yes.
notice when I get out of routine with that. And it is something that I think is so beautiful that you touched on, because it affects so much, not just this area, but it's like
Mhm.
this pleasure point, and then also this kind of acknowledgement of our body and this gratitude and this, so I love that. I just wanted to say, because that is something that I notice. I notice a big difference when I do it, and I notice a difference when I don't. So I can say that I've played with it both ways, and it is something that
Yes.
definitely is a benefit, and
Yes.
I've seen it work.
Even as a female wearing lingerie, even though you're not, you just have to go to work that day, put lingerie under your clothes and go to work. I want you to notice how the whole day you're more confident. You have a smile on your face. You feel great about yourself because you look sexy and beautiful. So doing that, no one needs to know. No one's gonna know or ask you what you're wearing under your clothes.
Right.
And just the act of doing all these things on your own, your partner's gonna notice if something's different about you.
Oh,
He's
for sure. It's the energy of it,
exactly,
right? That energy
exactly.
piece we talk about.
Yes.
You
So
exude something different. And
exactly. And that's when you come in and you'll be like, well, I've been kind of exploring with this stuff. And you just noticed it. And well, would you want to explore with me? We can do it together and we can figure out where you're at and how it fits for the both of us in our relationship.
I love it. And I think that's such a beautiful place to like end for our top. I mean, we could talk about this forever.
Yes.
This could be multiple episodes, which most likely it will be. Um, I think people are really going to love learning more about these sex languages. So I love it. Thank you so much for everything that you shared and being so open and vulnerable. And just that in itself is intimacy. And you know what I mean? It's just this open heart kind of sharing what we know and just showing up as us, and which I feel like gives people permission to do the same. So I appreciate you coming on here today and just sharing all of that. And I'm excited to have people learn about their sex languages. It's fun to learn about. It's kind of like, if nothing else, just learning about it is a step in the right direction and a step in the kind of fulfillment department. So I'll put your information in the show notes so people can get a hold of you. They'll be able to reach you all the different ways. And what is the best way if someone wants to get that questionnaire? Is it to email you, or is it to find you on Instagram and message you? What's the best way to get that questionnaire?
Send me an email with
Okay,
the word pillow talk for the questionnaire, and I will know exactly what you're talking about. But in
cool.
regards to reaching out, the email is the best way. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, Mari, this has been so lovely. I enjoyed catching up with you and learning more about this myself. And just thank you for the beautiful reminder that, we all have these soul attributes and alignments, and this is just another piece of that puzzle.
Well, thank you, Marlo. And it's been an honor to be on the podcast and to be able to share all these beautiful things. And I will say, just have fun with it.
I love it. I love that. Good
Yeah.
advice. Okay, you. Well, we will talk soon, and thank you again. Thanks so much for being here. Please rate, like, share, and review so we can stay connected and continue this magical journey together.